Things are gonna get crazy.
And the Oscar goes to...
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 Finding Nemo, Andrew Stanton.
Frozen.
Encanto!
Flow.
K-pop Demon Hunter.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a very special episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. And yes, this is indeed very special because we are going to get into the 2026 Oscars Spectacular, to which for at least most of the episode, we are going to go and cover what happened at the Oscars, not only discussing about the big winners, especially the animated ones, but also we are going to go and do a little review of the show itself. And don't worry, like I said, we are going to go and cover a few other extra things after our major Oscars discussion. Now, one thing that does stand out this year, however, is that unlike the previous times where it's just me talking about what's been going on with the Oscars and my thoughts on the winners and all that kind of stuff, I decided to go and bring in a very special guest star, one who has appeared on AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast, by the way, especially, honestly, the reason why I did bring him on board for this one is mainly because he is the perfect subject to go and discuss about what has happened, especially with the Oscars, considering that the last time he was here, we were talking about his new book, Bright and Shiny, in which it covers the history of animation during award shows, whether it be the Annie Awards, the Oscars, Emmys, and so much more, in which ever since then, Bright and Shiny has now become a trilogy, and I am more than excited to bring him back in order to go and discuss about the Oscars. So please, everybody, welcome back to AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast, film critic and author, Nick Spake. Nick, how are you doing, dude?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thank you so much for having me on again. I'm really happy to be here.
Hey, that's great. And by the way, considering that now that Bright and Shiny has become a trilogy, how have things been with the book? Like, how do you feel now that you're able to complete that whole trilogy?
It feels surreal, really, because when I initially wrote it as one giant tome. I never expected it to be as long as it did, and I finally figured, well, either I'm going to have to drastically trim this down, or this is going to have to be a trilogy of books. And fortunately, my publisher, Bear Manor Media, was open to releasing it in volumes, and the way that we ultimately broke it up worked out pretty well, too, with the first volume ending roughly around the same time The Lion King came out, which is when a lot of people were saying that there should be a Best Animated Feature category, but not quite yet. Then Volume 2 picks up with the creation of that category, and ends around the time that WALL-E came out, when everyone said that movie should be up for Best Picture, but it wasn't. Then Volume 3 picks up with the year that Up did get nominated, and it covers everything to when Flow came out last year, which was actually a last-minute addition to the third volume, but when that happened, I just had to make it part of the epilogue.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, that was a real game changer when Flow won, especially when, like, to this day, it still sounds very unprecedented when you got an international indie animated feature, like a movie that costs, like, I believe less than 3 million euros or something, ended up beating out, like, even the major contenders like The Wild Robot and Inside Out 2 in order to get, like, most of the big awards, including the Oscar.
And it was done in Blender, showing that really anyone that has the skill and the dedication can make an Oscar-winning animated feature, just as they've made Oscar-winning animated short films. And for the longest time, it felt like that would be the only real place for indie animation at the Oscars, but now it's pretty much an open floodgate, I think.
Oh, yeah. And we are going to go and discuss further into it as we are going to get into the Oscars. So with that said, Nick, I would like to go and ask you, are you ready for today's episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast?
Ready as I'll ever be.
All right. Now, chat wall, it's time that I go and ask you, are you ready for today's episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast? Let me hear it, everybody. Are you ready for this? So, let me see now. Yes, Yes. Oh, people are prepared. That's wonderful to see. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, even got Edward Bova being a new fish. Thank you so much. All right. So, with all that said, it is now time that we shall go and get things started. So yes, we are going to go and begin by discussing about the Oscars, in which we will go and immediately get into the animation categories. Of course, this is AniMat's crazy cartoon cast, so we might as well prioritize discussing about the animation winners. And this year, the big winner for Best Animated Short Film is The Girl Who Cried Pearls, to which it managed to go and win over Butterfly, Forever Green, Retirement Plan, and The Three Sisters. And as for Best Animated Feature, this year's winner is K-Pop Demon Hunters, to which it managed to win over Arco, Elio, Little Emily, or The Character of Rain, and Zootopia 2. It is also worth noting, by the way, that K-Pop Demon Hunters also got a second Oscar, to which it won for Best Original Song with Golden, to which it managed to get that over Dear Me from Diane Warren Relentless, I Lied to You from Sinners, Sweet Dreams of Joy from Viva Verdi, and Train Dreams from the movie of the same name. So let's go and actually start off by talking about Best Animated Short Film. How do you feel about The Girl Who Cried Pearls winning?
Lovely film, and I was glad to see it win here, even though Butterfly was my personal favorite. And I really stressed over what to predict in that category, because I always thought that it could be Girl Who Cried Pearls or Butterfly based on their animation alone, although I ultimately predicted Retirement Plan to win because I had heard a lot of buzz from that movie that people like Steven Spielberg really enjoyed it, and I thought that with the voiceover work from Domhnall Gleeson, it might push it to a win, but I'm not at all surprised that The Girl Who Cried Pearls won, not just for its animation, but also for its fabled storytelling, and it certainly didn't hurt that it had the National Film Board of Canada backing it, which has been behind a lot of Oscar-winning shorts, not just in animation, but live action too, and it's actually interesting because The Girl Who Cried Pearls is the first stop-motion film to win in that category since Peter and the Wolf in 2008, and the directors who made The Girl Who Cried Pearls, Chris Landis and Moshka Shukowski, they were actually nominated back in 2008 and lost to Peter and the Wolf, so it's come full circle with them winning here.
Yeah, I'm going to be very honest with you. I think with Best Animated Short, I am unapologetically biased for that. I really wanted The Girl Who Cried Pearls to win. Yes, I did. Like, for me personally, like, regardless of the context of The Girl Who Cried Pearls, I did find it to be my personal favorite of the other of all the animated shorts that were nominated this year. And I mean, there were some good ones, of course. Like I really did appreciate the artistry of Butterfly, and I really thought Forever Green was very cute. But The Girl Who Cried Pearls, I think, really took it to the next level, not just with a very engaging story with a great twist, but on top of that, the animation style is just gorgeous, like especially with that puppetry style stop motion that they did. And I saw the behind the scenes video that on how they did it, and a lot of it, it's basically it's stop motion rotoscoping. Like they had to film the actors first, and it was crazy because it was during the pandemic, and then they got the puppets to go and like recreate the acting from scratch from there. So it was very impressive. But the reason why I am personally very biased for that to win is because I am a Montrealer, so just like how I keep rooting for the Montreal Canadiens when I watch hockey, I gotta root for the National Film Board of Canada with what they did with The Girl Who Cried Pearls. And I can tell you right now, like on my in my area, like all the major news outlets, the big thing they're talking about, or at least one of the big things, as much as one battle after another winning Best Picture, they're talking about how an Oscar came to Montreal thanks to The Girl Who Cried Pearls. Not to mention how the directors did give out a shout out to Montreal during the acceptance speech. That was like a big deal. So personally, I am very happy to see The Girl Who Cried Pearls win. Like in my opinion, that's definitely a well-deserved one.
Yeah, if I had to rank all of the best animated shorts ever, it would probably be somewhere in the top 30s in that ballpark. And I actually got to interview the directors for The Girl Who Cried Pearls, and one of the most interesting tidbits they shared with me is that they were working on a budget, so they couldn't do mouth movements outside of the very beginning and the very end. The actual fable that takes place in the middle of it, the mouths don't actually move, although that ended up being a blessing in disguise because it gave the film a more distinct look. And even if they had money to do lip movements throughout the entire film, they're glad that they didn't because they wouldn't have done it any other way. And I agree that was a great way to execute it and give it its own signature.
Oh yeah, like honestly, it gives it a more unique style, and like I said, it feels, it really feels like they're emulating puppetry in a way. Like it emphasizes how these stop motion puppets are indeed puppets. So like honestly, it's like one of those budgetary constraints that kind of turned out to be a great creative advantage for the short.
It's a puppet show within a puppet show, kind of like the very opening of Team America.
Exactly. It's a little bit like that. All right, so now with that little discussion done, let's actually talk about the best animated feature here with K-pop Demon Hunters winning those 2 Oscars. What is your opinion on that? I do recall, like you have been a strong supporter of K-pop Demon Hunters, and I even saw when you did your top 10 list for the best of 2025, you did include K-pop Demon Hunters in there. So, how do you feel about it winning both best original song and best animated feature?
I've been a big champion of that film ever since it came out earlier in the summer, and I remember when it came out, everyone was saying the Academy is never going to touch it. They're not going to go for a film called K-pop Demon Hunters. And I'll admit I was also skeptical if they would actually go for it, but I was saying this definitely deserves to be a Best Animated Feature contender, and also a contender in Best Original Song for Golden. Or any song really that they submitted, but it made perfect sense to go with Golden because that's the one that blew up above all others. And as time went on, it became more of a phenomenon. It didn't become a matter of whether or not it was going to get nominated. It was guaranteed. The question was, could it beat anything else out? And we also had some other really lovely animated films this year. I know that a lot of people wanted to see Little Amelie potentially pull a flow this year, and maybe it could have, but I feel like Little Amelie also might have split some votes with Arco. They were both competing for that little movie that could narrative, and neither quite reached the same heights as Flow in terms of awards campaigning, but those films are also wonderful and should be sought out. And Zootopia 2 is also a wonderful sequel, though it has the disadvantage of being a sequel. Unless you're a Toy Story movie, you're probably not going to win the Oscar. We'll see if that continues this year with Toy Story 5, but for now, Zootopia 2, at least it avenged its predecessor at the BAFTA Awards, where K-pop Demon Hunters wasn't eligible. And finally, there was Elio, which, it's fine. I liked it more than some other people. I personally wouldn't have nominated it over something like Lost in Starlight or Chainsaw Man, or a lot of really good animated films weren't eligible this year. Like, it would have been great to see Predator, Killer of Killers in the mix, but apparently that's going for Emmy consideration as well, as far as I know.
Honestly, sorry to interrupt, but honestly, I was surprised when I saw the animated films that were eligible, and there were plenty that I was surprised that were not there. Not just Predator, Killer of Killers. I agree. That movie is very underrated. I really enjoyed that one, and it would have been nice to see that also be nominated. But also, we might as well address the elephant in the room. I'm still kind of baffled that Noja 2 is not in, didn't enter into the competition. That got me confused if it's maybe because it's related to something with China or something like that. But that I find to be a bit strange that it didn't enter in.
Yeah, that's very confusing, especially since A24 did its English dub, and A24 is very good usually at campaigning for awards, but Gold Derby reached out to A24, and supposedly they weren't responsible for its awards campaign, so maybe there was some confusion there. Maybe, its China distributor decided not to because the original didn't get nominated, and they also submitted the original film for China's international feature consideration entry, but it didn't get nominated there either. And considering that Neja 2 didn't do as well in the States, maybe that was their mentality, and it didn't get submitted at the Annies either. I checked the screening room portal for the Annies, and that wasn't on there, which explains why it wasn't nominated anywhere. And the weirdest thing of all, it wouldn't have been nominated. It wasn't even eligible or the Golden Globe for cinematic and box office achievement, because it didn't make over $100 million in the States, but somehow the highest grossing movie of the entire year couldn't get into a box office award, which is the most bizarre thing of all. And speaking of other films that weren't submitted, where was the Smurfs? I mean, we totally missed out a shot to nominate that.
Yeah, why not? We need that Rihanna representation, man. But also, I want to add that it's also kind of weird. Like, okay, that box office thing in the Golden Globes, that's honestly weird because, okay, like you have that argument about like Noja 2 not making enough. What's with K-pop Demon Hunters being nominated in there? Like, I remember that was still in there, and even how much it made at the box office, it ain't that far off compared to Noja 2.
Yeah, the caveat with that category is cinematic is a broad term, and they'll count it as long as if it's a streaming exclusive and it got a certain number of hits and large presence, then it's eligible, and that's how K-pop Demon Hunters qualified. And Asia 2, I guess, wouldn't have qualified through streaming because it didn't premiere on HBO Max until later in the year, and I don't know what the numbers were, but I didn't see it trending, so it definitely didn't do as well as something like K-pop Demon Hunters in terms of streaming hits.
Yeah. And also, I just want to go and express my little opinion on the whole thing. And I'm not going to lie. Like, okay, I need to make a big clarification, by the way, because keep in mind, people, I will be repeating this, that this is just my opinion. You don't have to be clutching pearls about what I'm going to say, all right? It's not going to change how you feel. It's not going to change how anyone else feels about it. This is just my opinion and how I feel about the whole thing. And also, I do think K-pop Demon Hunters is good. Like in my review, I did give it a 7 out of 10, which is a decent score. That is still good. But with that said, I was honestly underwhelmed with K-pop Demon Hunters winning both Best Animated Feature and Best Original Song. Those ones, I kind of feel like, you know, we kind of reversed from what happened last year and that we went for popularity over quality. Like for me, again, while K-pop Demon Hunters is good, I do find it to be the weakest entry amongst the Best Animated Feature category. Like I would even give it to Elio over K-pop Demon Hunters. So that's why it's just like, it feels like a bit of a throwaway, especially with the Oscars reputation of how, like, they don't really care much about animation and that, you know, we've had receipts of people who would vote that they would just go for like, yeah, I think my kid likes it. That sounds popular. I'll just go with this one. Whatever. You know, and it still rings true today where some people have still done that for K-pop Demon Hunters. And this is not even to mention in the ceremony itself, it was among the first category, like animation was among the first categories to be presented, just to like get that out of the way first before moving on to the actual show itself. And even with like I'd even say the same thing with Golden. I just feel like that's another one where it's from the popularity more so than the actual quality of the song itself. Like I personally would have gone more with If I Lie to You over K-pop Demon Hunters. So that was honestly like a win. Like those were wins that I just find to be a bit underwhelming. Again, this is just my personal opinion on this, and I do think it is a good movie, but I don't really think it's great enough to earn those respective wins. Even like also with Golden, it's like, considering how last year, like they gave it to Emilia Perez for Best Original Song, and then they moved to like Golden, it's like, it feels like something that kind of tracks a bit with like their taste and what they would go for. So yeah, I wasn't really as enthusiastic. But on the flip side, however, I will give credit to Maggie Kang and Chris Applehouse. They did have a very nice accepted speech. It is definitely one of the most heartfelt from this year. So that is definitely very, you know, that is very, very nice of them for what they have said in there. So again, this is just my opinion. You don't have to like be super offended over what I said. It's not going to change how you feel about it. It's not going to change how anyone else feels about it. You know, it's not the kind where it's worth making like an 80-minute rant video over what I said, but that's just personally how I feel about the matter.
Yeah, and you're entitled to your opinion for sure. Although I do think that K-pop Demon Hunters is a unique entry in the Best Animated Feature pantheon, and it does continue the trend to extent. Even though it's not an independent film like Flow, it's not an international film like The Boy in Tehran, and it's not necessarily a film that takes quite as big of a swing in terms of content that you could do in animation like Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, it's still an enormous swing because in what other era would we get a film called K-pop Demon Hunters greenlit? To look at this year's animation output theatrically, almost everything was either a sequel or an adaptation, and even though K-pop Demon Hunters was sent straight to streaming, it proved popular enough and became organically popular enough to become a phenomenon. And it's really interesting that Netflix was originally positioning In Your Dreams as their Oscar contender this year. They released the trailer for that film way back in summer, way ahead of its November release, and they very unceremoniously released the trailer for K-pop Demon Hunters maybe a month before it came out. No one really had any faith in that film, especially when it came to Oscar consideration. But it became the organic favorite, and I feel like the industry really wanted to award that originality, beyond simply going with what their kids liked the most. I kind of knew that it was going to be an Oscar player from the minute that I saw that Chris Sanders was talking about it on his social media. He was talking about the blue cat in K-pop Demon Hunters, and how he just felt this urge to draw it after seeing that film. And I thought to myself, if this is inspiring people in the industry like Chris Sanders, then it's going to be an Oscar player. And I do think it's going to go down as one of the more unique entries in the Best Animated Feature history. And as for Golden, I think it's a much better song than El Mal from last year. And if we were going by the best scene of the year, that might be I Lied to You. Although I personally think when you isolate the song from the scene itself, it doesn't have quite as much power. When you see it all come together in the film, then it truly is a cinematic achievement. But if we were going by the song purely itself and that's all we're judging, I think that Golden is more of the earworm that does still tie into the themes of the story and expresses what the main characters are going through. But that's my opinion.
No, that's definitely fair. Like, I get where you're going with it. And I mean, like, with K-pop Demon Hunters, it's like, yeah, it's definitely worth noting about like the story of like the movie that could, like the film that no one expected to become so big and it suddenly has. And not to mention, like with Netflix also, that they didn't even try with the marketing, and that, and that's one thing I do agree. It is technically it's technically the best animated feature that came out on Netflix last year, at least compared to like the other stuff they put out, like In Your Dreams or The Twits also. So like, yeah, so like it also got lucky on that. But like I'm just looking exclusively on the merit, like on the final product. Like I'm just personally speaking on the movie itself, and that's why like I ended up like feeling just a bit but like I know that like my opinion is definitely far different from everyone else's, including yours, but yeah, so I just thought I would just like get that out of the way though. But still, though, it is still worth mentioning. Congratulations to the winners, both like with the directors of The Girl Who Cried Pearls and especially the National Film Board of Canada, along with congratulations to Maggie Kang, Chris Applehaus, and the team at Sony Animation for the win with K-pop Demon Hunters. All right, so with that said, I'd like to go and pass this off to the chat wall, and now I want to go and ask you all, what do you all think about the winners, both with K-pop Demon Hunters and The Girl Who Cried Pearls? How do you guys feel about those wins? Let me know what you all think now. Let's see. And I know I'm going to be reading a lot of people saying, I was like, sorry, Matt, I got to disagree with you there. For example, sorry, Matt, I got to disagree with you on this. Anyways, I was personally rooting for K-pop Demon Hunters to win since it is a phenomenal movie. And to see it take home Best Animated and Best Original Song really made my night. But Academy, dick move for not letting them finish that speech. As for my prediction for next year, which I'll likely be wrong, maybe Toy Story 5, Those toys haven't walked away empty-handed before. Well, okay, those speeches, I'm gonna save that for later because that's a whole conversation in itself. Let's see now. What a shock for K-pop Demon Hunters. Another historic win is that K-pop is the first non-Disney animated film to win 2 Oscars. Is that true?
That is true, and it's also the second non-Disney Pixar film to win Best Original Song. The first was When You Believe from Prince of Egypt.
Ah, okay. Well, now the question is, will Disney redeem themselves with Hoppers, Hex, or most likely with Toy Story 5, since it's the only franchises that could get its sequels to win? Or will Laika get their first win with Wildwood or Shaun the Sheep? Or what indie film that we will come to see in the spotlight? Also, shout out to Will Arnett on how he presented the categories. Well, yeah, I think what's going to be next year, I think that's going to be a wait and see.
It'd be great to see Laika finally pull through, but we'll see, because this year we all thought that Scarlet might be a contender, and that film wasn't half bad, but it definitely wasn't one of the director's better works, and I wasn't surprised to see it ultimately get admitted. But if we had gotten A Girl Who Left Through Time this year, maybe, but Scarlet wasn't The Girl Who Left Through Time.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw it, and I was like, I felt like it really bit off more than it could chew.
It was definitely the second best Hamlet-related movie that came out last year.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm honestly very happy with these wins. K-pop Demon Hunters definitely deserve the win. It was one of my favorite animated films of last year, and it was honestly predictable. I'm also very happy Golden won for Best Original Song, especially with how it became one of, if not the biggest song of last year. I think the only downside is if you got the cartoon community being their usual toxic selves and using K-pop Demon Hunters win as an excuse to slam and hate Disney. Yeah, that's always going to be the downside, unfortunately.
Yeah, let's not demonize anyone, people.
Yeah, exactly. Just be happy of the winners. You don't have to take down others in order to celebrate. Let's see. To be honest, I'm on the same boat as you, Matt, where I do think K-pop Demon Hunters is good, but not Oscar-worthy in my eyes, especially over vastly superior films like Little Amelie or especially Zootopia 2. But I will admit that while K-pop Demon Hunters is good, but a bit overrated, there are some really good things in it, and for how much of a phenomenon it has become, I can at least understand why it won, even though I do prefer other winners that did become phenomenons like Frozen and Encanto. All right, fair enough. I think I'll have time for one more comment, and then we're going to go on our first break. Or maybe 2, actually. Maggie and Chris's speech was definitely my favorite this year in this year's show. I'm happy for them. I did feel that she mentioned about diversity and the love for Korea. Same for Golden when EJE won as well. So yeah, major congrats to one of my favorite people right now. Lucky enough to meet EJE. Is it EJE or EJ, by the way?
I've been pronouncing it EJ, but I could be mistaken on that.
Yeah, I don't know. I always mispronounce names, so that's why I always got to make sure. Anyways, lucky enough to meet EJ last time, and she's one of the kindest people I've met. Very nice. I say with all due respect, I give my congratulations to the people who made it and those who gave it their all. But honestly, K-pop Demon Hunters was the last thing I wanted to win. Not saying it's a bad movie. In fact, I'm happy for Golden, but I do think it's overpraised. It's not even in my top 5. I hope for other films outside of Disney to win. I'd even say the Plankton movie was a better film than Demon Hunters, and not because I'm a fan. I feel like it has a better storyline. Not a big deal, but better to just let it slide. Okay, so maybe a little bit of a mixed reception, but mostly leaning towards positive. But those are the animation winners for you. And we're going to go on to our first break. And when we come back, then we are going to go and discuss about all the other winners at this year's Oscars. All right, welcome back. Now, considering that we've talked about the animation winners, it's time to go and take a look at the live action winners. Or, safe to say, pretty much everyone else. So, let's get into it and talk about all the other big winners at the 98th Academy Awards. And this year's big winner is One Battle After Another, to which it managed to walk out with a total of 6 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director for Paul Thomas Anderson, Best Actor in a Supporting Role, which went to Sean Penn. Then you also got Best Writing for Adapted Screenplay for, of course, One Battle After Another, based on the novel Vineland by Thomas Pynchon. I believe that's how you say his name. Then following afterwards, you also have, it is also the first ever movie to win for Best Casting, the new category, as well as winning for Best Film Editing. Following that, there is also Sinners, in which it managed to walk out with 4 Oscars, considering that it made major headlines as the most Oscar-nominated movie in history, in which it had 16 nominations at this year's Oscars, but it only managed to grab a quarter of it, in which it managed to get Best Actor in a Leading Role for Michael B. Jordan. Then it also went on to go and win for Best Original Score for Ludwig Göransson. It also managed to win Best Cinematography, as well as winning, there's one more that I may have forgotten, it also won for Best Writing for an Original Screenplay for Ryan Coogler, which, by the way, it is also worth noting that when it comes to Best Cinematography, the winner, Autumn Durald Arkapaw, turned out to be the first ever woman to win in that category. And a massive surprise is actually Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, to which it managed to win 3 Oscars, winning for Best Production Design, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, and Best Costume Design. Other notable winners this year includes Avatar: Fire and Ash, winning for Best Visual Effects. There is also F1, in which it won for Best Sound. You also got this is a major one, in which this is a very rare opportunity in which we saw a tie in Best Live Action Short Film, which went to both The Singers and Two People Exchanging Saliva. You got All the Empty Rooms winning Best Documentary Short, Mr. Nobody Against Putin winning Best Documentary Feature, Sentimental Values winning for Best International Feature. And finally, you got Amy Madigan winning for Weapons in Best Actress in a Supporting Role, as well as Jessie Buckley winning for Hamnet in Best Actress in a Leading Role. So there's a whole bunch to go and cover, but I'd like to know your general thoughts on all these winners.
Yeah, for the most part, I'm very satisfied with the winners because One Battle was my favorite film from 2025, Sinners was also in my top 3, and they also awarded some of my favorite performances of last year too, from Jessie Buckley in Hamnet to Michael B. Jordan in Sinners. It was great to see him recognized in there for the first dual performance from a horror movie since Frederick March in Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde in the 1930s. So I was very happy to not only see them, but also Amy Madigan in Weapons. And what I find interesting is that between Sinners, One Battle, and also Weapons, it was a great night for Warner Brothers, but you know what got 0 nominations this year? Nothing from Paramount. So just kind of has me feeling depressed for the future of cinema. But for now, we can celebrate the peak, I guess, before the ultimate downfall.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, like, it's kind of like a short-term laugh, but then you realize it's like a long-term dread because it's like, Paramount didn't get anything and Warner Brothers came out as a big winner, but then you realize, oh crap, they're gonna get Warner Brothers. Oh, that's like quite a downer. Oh yeah, and some people in the chat are even mentioning, considering Conan O'Brien also said it, Amazon also came out empty-handed, especially with nominations.
Yeah, it was interesting that they didn't have anything this year, although maybe they'll be back next year because I think they're doing Project Hail Mary. I gotta check that, but that's been getting pretty good reviews so far.
Yeah, I have been here. Yeah, like so far, I have been hearing like it's been very solid. And well, I might as well go and ask this now. Like, you've seen Project Hail Mary, right?
I'm actually seeing it on Wednesday. That's when they're having the early screening here. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was curious because like I knew some people like they got the press screening already. I was just curious, like if you have seen it, then like would you consider it like a contender for next year?
I actually could have gone to an earlier press screening, but I had another commitment that day. But from everything I've heard, it is a potential contender, and we'll see how it does at the box office because it has a huge price tag. But hopefully people will actually show up to see it, and based on the buzz, I do think that a significant amount will do. Hoppers is giving me hope with how that's doing.
Yeah, like no, Hoppers is doing quite fine, and I mean like I can imagine not Sinner, sorry, but Project Hail Mary can do, it could do well, but if it does have like a massive budget, then it is going to be concerning because I will say there might be one major obstacle that like might put a wrench on things on that film. And I'm like, maybe it's not going to affect it much, but I'm just wondering about like, how's it going to do when the Super Mario Brothers movie is going to come, the Super Mario Galaxy movie is going to come out?
Yeah, because that's coming out just around the corner, but I guess you could argue maybe counter-programming because maybe they're going for different audiences, but at the same time, I could see some crossover between the two, but with any luck, Project Hail Mary will have legs, so let's see.
Okay, well, we'll see. We'll definitely see. But anyways, back to our main subject, to what we're talking about with this year's winners also. Any standouts, any like any that like kind of surprise you, or are there any that you feel like are snubs?
I think the biggest one you touched upon was the tie in Best Live Action Short Film, and that's only happened, I think, 7 times in history that they've had a tie at the Oscars, and one of those times was also in live action short in the 90s, and the last time we saw a tie was for Best Sound Editing when Zero Dark 30 tied with Skyfall back in 2012. And I think one of the reasons why we sometimes see ties in the live action short category is because fewer people are opting in to vote for that one. With the bigger awards like Best Picture, you're gonna probably get the entire Academy to opt in, even if they haven't seen every nominee. When it comes to the short films, only a select few will actually vote because only a select few will actually take the time to vote in that category. And I think those people are actually doing their homework, but it also means if you have fewer people voting, then you stand a better chance at getting a tie, which is how something like that happens. And going into this year, I was wondering, I wonder if we could have a tie in Best Best Animated Short. I just kind of had this inkling, just what if that were to happen, just because I was stressing over my predictions in that category. And nope, it ended up being Best Live Action Short. And another weird thing is that when I was making my predictions for that category, I was all like, okay, I'm going to predict 2 people exchanging saliva, but I wouldn't be surprised if the singers won here. And in the end, they both won, although I was personally rooting for Jane Austen's period drama. And if you can track that short film down, definitely watch it. It's a laugh riot.
Oh, nice. I was just about to ask, like, what would you think? Like, maybe it's not as much as like live action short, but do you think there would be any chance if Best Animated Feature would suddenly find itself in a tie?
I mean, it's never say never. It could happen. I just don't see it happening anytime soon because I do think that one does get higher voter output.
All right, that's fair. Definitely fair. Yeah, I will say, like, with the live action short, like that even took me aback. I haven't seen the live action shorts, unfortunately, but I mean, like, as you mentioned, there are some that are like very good and worth checking out. But yeah, I think I was just taken aback in general over the concept of like a tie happening at the Oscars because of how they are very rare. Like it completely slipped my mind when I saw, it slipped my mind when there was that tie with Zero Dark Trinity and Skyfall. Like I completely forgot like those would occur, but yeah, I guess it's like it's a very rare opportunity to see that happen, and yet like lo and behold, suddenly like that could be a thing. So I guess like we kind of have to accept that these are like one of those once in a blue moon opportunities, but definitely like one of those rare oddities that kind of is like one of those like standouts from this year's Oscars, is that one category managed to get like 2 winners.
Yeah. And also, I'm glad that I can finally call Paul Thomas Anderson a 3-time Oscar winner after all these years. And even though I was rooting for him to win Best Director, it is a shame that we're almost approaching 100 years of the Academy, and not one black person has won in the Best Director prize. And what better opportunity than to award Ryan Coogler, even though he did get his flowers this year with a very deserved Best Original Screenplay Oscar, and he'll definitely be back at the Oscars. It's just going to be very uncomfortable knowing that we may go 100 years without a single black person winning in that category. Although we have seen people of color win there with Chloe Zhao. But there's always room for improvement in that respect.
Nah, definitely true. In fact, that's actually another thing I want to go and discuss, considering that with Sinners, it was the most Oscar-nominated animated feature. Not animated feature. What the fridge am I talking about? The most Oscar-nominated movie of all time now, with its 16 nominations. But because of that, people have noted that it has now broken the record of the most losses, considering that it managed to get 4 wins, but it managed to also get 12 losses where it didn't get anything. And that has now stirred up a little bit of controversy and bringing up the discussion of race and representation in the Academy. Just out of curiosity, like, I know it's kind of weird considering that we are 2 white guys discussing about this, but do you have any comments in regards to that?
I do think that it's definitely a discussion that needs to be had, and I think in any other year we wouldn't be having this discussion, just because I think that Sinners' 16 nominations would have translated into more wins. It just had the misfortune of going up against One Battle, which was up for 13 nominations, which isn't a small number by any means, and it probably would have won in a lot of those categories, but also it was going up against Frankenstein, which might not have been as strong of a movie overall, but it is Del Toro, and when you have his name attached, you're going to probably do very well in categories like Best Makeup, Best Costume Design, Best Production Design. All were categories that Sinners probably could have won in another year, but going up against Frankenstein, it was kind of undeniable in that respect. And I saw someone doing math online about what was number 2 in a lot of categories, and they said that Sinners was probably the strongest number 2 in the history of the Oscars. But even though it lost the most with 12 overall, it's far from an Oscar loser. That's kind of like saying Meryl Streep is the biggest Oscar loser in history, because she has 3 Oscars, but she's also been nominated almost 20 times in history that she didn't win for, but we can't really call her an Oscar loser. I think that if anyone is an Oscar loser, it's probably still Diane Warren, who isn't winning an Oscar anytime soon with the output she's been putting, but she'll keep getting the nomination year after year.
Yeah.
And for all of Oscars, I was going to say, for all of the Oscars that Sinners did lose, it still got some huge ones. I mean, Michael B. Jordan winning in Best Actor. When people saw that film last year, people were saying, he's great in it, but is he going to be able to go all the way? And he did. Ryan Coogler is officially an Oscar winner. We have the first female cinematographer who's also a woman of color. So Ryan Coogler, he's going to be a voice who's going to be around in the industry for a long time. And he's come closer and closer. He's gone up the Academy Bridge with every film. He wasn't nominated for Best Director for Black Panther, but that film still got into Best Picture. Now with Sinners, he's directed a Best Picture nominee, as well as becoming an Oscar-nominated director, and winning an Oscar for screenplay. So we're taking baby steps, but it was a pretty huge baby step, I think, this year.
All right, that is fair enough. That definitely is fair. I mean, there are the losses, but it's important to, technically, Sinners is now a 4-time Oscar winner, and it got one of the big ones with Michael B. Jordan, which, by the way, speaking of Best Actor, I think it is worth bringing up. It is worth discussing, considering that with the Best Actor category, some people have said that there might have been a big switch, mainly because of Timothée Chalamet. And a lot of people were saying that with his performance as Marty Supreme, he was about to be the big winner. But then there was his big controversy in which he, I wouldn't say he misspoke, but he made a pretty cringy and stupid comment in regards to ballet and opera, which caused a lot of backlash. Just out of curiosity, do you think that might have played a factor in which we ended up with Michael B. Jordan winning his Oscar? Or do you think, like, either way, like, even if Timothée Chalamet didn't say that, the Oscar would have still gone to Michael B. Jordan for Best Actor?
Well, actually, I can definitively say that the ballet comments didn't factor into Timothy losing because he made that comment after people had already marked their ballots. The voting was closed, so he said that after. So even if he had won, people wouldn't have affected. But that said, Timothy's campaign was already kind of starting to go downhill because some people thought that he was being a little egotistical on the campaign trail. And the thing is that even though Marty Supreme got 9 nominations, some people were off-put by the main character, who isn't very likable. It's from one half of the people who did Uncut Gems, which was also about an unlikable character, which might be why Adam Sandler didn't get nominated for that performance, even though he definitely would have been deserving. And as great as Timothée Chalamet is in Marty Supreme, there's also a mentality that he's still very young. He just turned 30, whereas Michael B. Jordan, he's almost 40, so he's a little more respected. He's been around a little longer. And I think the wins really shifted at the Actor Awards, where it was a bit of a surprise when Michael B. Jordan won. The house really erupted when he won there. Viola Davis, when she opened the envelope, she said, "Oh, Michael B. Jordan." There was a huge celebration. And it also helped that he won that particular award around the same time that people were starting to vote on the Oscars. So Michael B. Jordan was surging at just the right time, just as Timothée Chalamet was starting to go downhill in his campaign. And the ballet comment didn't factor into that, but it definitely gave Conan something to work with in his monologue.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's been a little bit of a repetitive theme during the show itself that you keep hearing again and again and again about, like, what Timothée Chalamet said during that time. So, okay, that does make sense, honestly. Like, it does make sense to know, like, it's beyond those little factors. It's like, the timing didn't work out so what, the timing just seems like a little bit off, but yeah, like, and honestly, like, when it comes to, like, Timothée Chalamet, I've heard other stuff as well that, like, even, like, I remember discussing with my friends about Timothée Chalamet, and some people are talking about, like some other controversies that haven't really been brought up. Like, I don't know how true it is, but I did hear rumors that apparently, like, he's like a fan or an admirer of Roman Polanski, and for many people that's like a big red flag right there. So there is also that, but either way, though, that's like a whole different subject altogether. So, but I will say, like, just to go back to Sinners and, like, to put a little bit of my comment on it, like, as much as I do love Sinners, like, I did find it a little bit weird that it got all those nominations. Like, and I have talked about this before. Like, it got all those nominations, and yet the competition has been very severe, especially with One Battle After Another. And I will say, One Battle After Another winning all those Oscars, especially Best Picture, definitely earned it. Phenomenal movie. I think it, in my opinion, definitely fantastic. But yeah, it is kind of weird. Like, I guess, like, it's a time where the timing and the competition, like, just didn't fall as much in Sinners' favor. Like, as you mentioned, if it were any other year, then maybe we would have seen Sinners walk out with more. But because there were some heavy hitters like Frankenstein and especially One Battle After Another, at least it did, like, at least Sinners did walk out with something.
Yeah, and only 4 films won multiple Oscars this year, with One Battle, Sinners, Frankenstein, and also K-Pop Demon Hunters, which was the most awarded film this year not in Best Picture. And between Sinners and K-Pop, interesting that 2 of the biggest Oscar winners this year were about people fighting monsters with music.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is like when you look back last year, like not related to the Oscars, but 2025 really was the year of like Asian themed animated features where characters fight off against demons. Like me and another film critic, Rachel Wagner, like we've pointed that out and how funny it is because it's not just K-pop Demon Hunters, but then you also got Noja 2, then you also got the Demon Slayer movie and Infinity Castle, and then I think also Chainsaw Man also applies into this. So yeah, we've been seeing quite a pattern that year with that. So yeah, it's been a thing, I will say. But yeah, overall though, I will say, yeah, I think that should be good with our little discussion with all the other winners. And of course, congratulations to all the big wins at this year's Oscars. And not to mention, like, just like a quick additional comment on how, like, it's been quite an exciting night for horror fans, especially considering the one win from Weapons and especially with Sinners. But now I would like to pass this on to the chat wall, and I want to ask you all, what do you all think about the other winners? What are your comments on them? Are there any like major surprises? Are there any that you're happy? Are there any snubs? Let me know what you all think. All right, so let's see. I'm honestly pretty satisfied with the result this year. I love One Battle After Another, Sinners and Weapons, and their wins were absolutely deserved. And it just feels so great now to be able to call Paul Thomas Anderson and Ryan Coogler Oscar winners. By the way, no disrespect, but I think you opened a backlash floodgates by comparing Golden to the songs of Emilia Perez. Yeah, I know, but again, that's why I'm just saying it's just my opinion. I know not many people are gonna. I know many people are gonna disagree with me on that, but again, it's just my opinion. It's not something that we'd have to like freak out over. And no, I'm not going to take the freaking L on that because that's just my opinion. Simple as that. Anyways, let's see. One Battle After Another was my favorite movie from 2025, and I was ecstatic to see that it got Best Picture. Viva la revolucion, baby! As for the other wins, Michael B. Jordan was an awesome surprise, even if my money was on Chalamet. All the Frankenstein wins were really cool, and dude, I was taken so aback when Kumail Nanjiani announced that the tie for Best Live Action Short. Not that I'm complaining, still technically won that Oscar pool. Always bet on the nominees with the funniest names. Yeah, it is true. I mean, like, you might have, if you're going to go and look at the list, if you don't know any of them, just go with the goofy sounding ones. It's like, let's see, People Exchanging Saliva. Yep, sounds like a winner right there. Let's see.
Jane Austen period drama is a very layered title. If you see the movie, you'll understand.
Ah, yeah, fair enough. Let's see. I'm honestly very happy with a lot of these wins. Some of the standout wins were definitely One Battle After Another, winning several awards, Frankenstein winning a few awards, and Sinners winning quite a few. And I'm happy both Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan finally got their big wins. And in the case of Michael B. Jordan, one moment I thought that was really cool was after the show, he celebrated his win at In-N-Out Burger, and that was such a sweet and awesome moment. Yeah, that's always a nice tradition. Like when you get your Oscar, you got to go to In-N-Out. Let's see. Honestly, I was rooting for Sinners for most stuff, and while it didn't win some of the flashiest awards, what it earned is nothing to sneeze at, and I won't argue what it did win was it was most deserved, like with actor and cinematography. Glad Paul Thomas Anderson finally got his overdue Oscar love for One Battle, but still happy Ryan Coogler got his flowers with a deserved Best Screenplay win. But no matter who won, both have great futures ahead of them and can't wait for what they do next. All right, very nice. Let's see. Well, for my results on my predictions, I got 20 out of 24. Casting was the hardest category to predict because you didn't know who got to win that, and that tie for live action short. If there would have been a tie, it could have been for Best Picture. I think that tie was the key of the voting because this was the first year that the Oscars had to watch everything in order to vote, but some of them is a lie. By the way, Nick, I have all 3 of your books and really enjoyed it. Well done on your research.
Oh, why, thank you so much.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Glad to see. Hey, glad to see that there are some fans for you.
Satisfied with just one fan.
Let's see now. I already read that one. I think I'll just go with one more, and then we'll move on to our next break. Sinners in One Battle getting the big wins this year was definitely great in my books. It's a shame that Paramount is trying to get Warner Brothers despite Paramount being in debt. So anyways, this is how you go. This is how you give out awards. Take note, Asifa. No one wants sweeps like that anymore. So yeah, major congrats to Paul Thomas Anderson and the crew for the big win. Actually, we do have one more, just to quickly go through. I'm mostly happy with all the wins for this year. I'm surprised that Amy Madigan won Best Supporting Actress and that there was a tie for live action short. I am very happy that Michael B. Jordan won for Best Actor. Very well deserved win. And standout to me was when Paul Thomas Anderson finally won an Oscar for adapted screenplay and director. I got 15 out of the 24 for my predictions. This was definitely an interesting Oscar ceremony. All right, so with that said, we're going to go on to our next break. And instead of talking about the winners, we are going to go and look into the show. So stay tuned for that. And then we are going to go into our little review of the ceremony. All right, welcome back. So now that we have done our discussion in terms of the winners, both the animated and live action ones, let's actually talk about the ceremony, the live event hosted by Conan O'Brien. And Nick, considering you have seen it, I would like to know your thoughts on the entire show.
Well, as far as hosting goes, I think Conan once again delivered the goods. He was a great host when he hosted the Emmys years ago, and he was great when he hosted the Oscars last year, and I hope they keep him around, assuming that he's not really dead, as we saw in the final throwaway gag from One Battle After Another at the very end, and he isn't just replaced with Mr. Beast, but he opened the show on just the right note with his Gladys routine, going from different movies, dressed as Amy Madigan, and he has a way of making pretty much anything sound funny, in my opinion. Even when one of his jokes bombs or the room doesn't vibe with it, he kind of makes that the joke. Nobody's better at making fun of himself than Conan O'Brien. Some of the other bits kind of went on longer than maybe they needed to, like the Bridesmaids bit. It was great to see that cast reunited, even if their bit went on too long. And I'm not sure what Lewis Pullman and, his son were talking about really, but that bit also went on too long. And it's a shame those bits, fed into some of the speeches, with some of them cutting off, which has been a reoccurring problem. We already mentioned earlier about how they cut off Golden Crew, but they also cut off the Avatar Fire and Ash crew when they won for Best Visual Effects, and not the first time they've done that for an Avatar movie. Way of Water won a few years back, and they cut off them too, so that was pretty annoying. But overall, I'd say it was a well-produced ceremony, besides those major hiccups.
Yeah, honestly, I might be a little bit more on the cynical side or the more pessimistic side, because I was personally a little bit underwhelmed by this year's show. I mean, I loved last year. I thought it was great, especially with Conan O'Brien hosting. But this year, I don't know if it's the show itself or maybe it's just me and my inner circle, but I just felt like the vibe was just not there. I just felt like a lot of the enthusiasm and the spirit of the Oscars was just not there anymore. I just felt like when the show was on, there's a lot of it where they let slide a lot of technical difficulties, a lot of not camera issues, but camera positionings that just feel like they weren't right, or that they're not as well coordinated as they would usually be. And not to mention, there was that one point where there was an accepted speech and suddenly they decided to lower the microphone and the camera was just stuck on Conan O'Brien. Do you remember that part?
I remember that, and he was just kind of awkwardly standing there, and I believe they did go back after that, but that was an example of one of the hiccups that I think got away. They need to really let people give their entire speeches, and now that the show is moving to YouTube in a few years, I hope that's what they'll do. Let them give as long of a speech as they want. And we did actually have one good bit where Adrian Brody looked like he was going to continue his overly long speech from last year before he presented Best Actor.
Yeah, like I will agree. There are definitely a bunch of cute moments for sure. Like there are some times like whenever they have like a goofy comedy bit, like Conan O'Brien winning his best achievement and then like being crowned like a king and Josh Groban just singing in the middle of the stage. Like that was cute. And there was the moment also with Grogu as he's watching and like they're just interacting with him. That was also a lot of fun as well. But at the same time, like just bringing up the hiccups from time to time, like I feel like they were a little bit more frequent, and especially the interruptions. I know you've already talked a good bunch of them. I don't know if it's like they're more frequent or maybe they're more prominent, but yeah, they really do stand out where like this year, the Oscars just don't care. Like they don't care about like who's being accepted and stuff like that. It's like with most of them, like they are strict with their time limit. And whenever like somebody wants to go and like give their speech, they're like, no thanks, you're done, you're finished, please get out. And that is especially the case. Like the biggest standout was like really when Golden did win, and then you got EJ, like she gave her speech, and just as one of the guys stepped in to talk, that's when it was like, no, you're done, microphone off, GTFO. So yeah, I feel like that is a lot. So yeah, like it felt like a little bit more frequent. There's like a few that they really had to do that, where they had to take out the cane and just like drag them out of the stage. So that's why honestly, what?
Yeah, I was going to say it's especially annoying because they only performed 2 of the nominated songs. They decided they weren't going to do 3 of them, which would give them more time. But even with that more time, they couldn't dedicate it to letting people give their entire speeches, especially for something like Golden, which was such a phenomenon. And they really built up through the ceremony. It was performed towards the end of it. It was basically preordained that it was going to win. And given how popular that song is, you think you would give the entire crew, or at least everyone who wanted to talk, a chance to speak, and yet they said, no, we're cutting off you. And I did see online that backstage they did ask the Golden crew if there was anything they wanted to say that didn't get a chance to, so they at least got to say what they wanted to back there, but they should have been able to say it on the telecast.
Yeah, and not to mention also, like, I know a lot of people have talked about it ever since it was first announced, but I just find it such a weird decision. And, like, honestly, it feels like one that is, like, a little, like, obviously manufactured for the sake of ratings and stuff like that, that they would only do 2 of the songs to go and present for Best Original Song instead of giving all of them a moment to shine and, like, you know, spotlight them all. Like, I get it with last year, they don't want to present any of the songs and, like, you know, don't want to put too much of a spotlight on the Emilia Perez controversy. But this year, it's like, it kind of feels disrespectful to the other songs that are nominated. Like, yeah, we know the big ones are Golden because that's the most popular, that's one of, if not the most popular song of last year. And also If I Lied to You because it's with Sinners. But it kind of feels like what they were highlighting with Best Original Song is Golden, If I Lied to You, and the rest. Like, not even, like, don't care about, like, what's their song, what they sound like, or anything like that. Nope, let's just highlight those 2 songs because those are the popular ones that will probably help boost up the ratings the most. Like, it's more, that honestly feels like a cringy executive decision that ends up being passed off as disrespectful.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it might be telling. I think one of the reasons they did that is because those 3 other songs weren't as high profile. And I feel like they wouldn't have done that if they had nominated a song like one of the songs from Wicked for Good, which got no Oscar nominations, which was kind of a shocker. But it could also just be on the music branch. They feel that they're not always going for the songs that would ignite fanfare, but they should still perform all of the nominated songs, assuming they can get all of the nominees to perform on the telecast.
Yeah, exactly. That's when I honestly feel like it's either you nominate, you go and present all of them, showcase all of them, or you showcase none of them. Don't go with a few, because then it just, it just feels like you're kind of like giving out too much of a clue of like who you think is going to be the winner at that point.
It would also be very awkward if one of the other three films did win in that category. It wasn't going to happen, but just imagine seeing Diane Warren get up there for a song that she didn't have performed on the actual telecast. And they've kind of shot themselves in the foot with that sort of thing too. Like the year Chadwick Boseman, everyone thought he was going to win. They set it up as if he was going to win by having that category at the very end, but then Anthony Hopkins won. So I don't think that the Academy should play with fire like that either.
Oh, that is true. I forgot about that. Like, everybody was ready for that tribute, and then they gave it to Anthony Hopkins, and they're like, all right, he won. Bye. Yeah, that was just weird. So overall, because of the fact that the hiccups seem to be more frequent, the interruptions of the acceptance speech, like, they're more severe. There's just something about it in which the vibe didn't really feel as strong to really put on a great show, or like to do what Conan O'Brien would say, to go and like promote optimism and the love of movies and stuff. It just didn't feel like it was there, at the very least, as much as the previous features. And this is not to mention also, I don't know if this is just me, but I also feel like the ending was a bit rushed as well. I mean, thankfully, none of the bigger winners, none of them had their acceptance speeches interrupted. But I kind of feel like when you're at the point when you go into like the big ones, like Best Actor or Best Actress or Best Director or even Best Picture, you would like really take a moment to go into those and like really highlight what they had to say in their acceptance speeches, what they had to say to all the nominees and stuff like that. But no, those honestly went by rather quickly. Am I the only one?
You can see what you're coming from, although I think part of that might be because once we did get to the final categories, a lot of people could sense where the ceremony was going. Michael B. Jordan winning was a bit of a surprise, even though some people saw that coming, but we knew that Jessie Buckley was winning Best Actress, and we also kind of thought that One Battle had it all locked up in picture and director, and we had already seen PTA get up on stage earlier, so it's not like he was like getting his first Oscar right then and there. He already had one from earlier in the evening. I know that some people were predicting a Sinners surprise at the very end, and I think if Sinners had won, then it would have been the explosion that you're talking about, just something that we didn't think would happen, but then it does. But seeing it go to the one that we all thought was going to win, it does feel anticlimactic to an extent, but at the same time, we can't really argue that One Battle After Another didn't deserve its wins, and I do think history will look back fondly on those wins, and I do think that, yeah, I was about ready to get up after One Battle Off, but then I saw Conan did one last bit, which was actually a pretty funny way to go out, although I don't think we really need Mr. Beast to host next year.
I hope that's just a joke. Oh, God. Please don't bring in Mr. Beast, like, especially with his problematic things, like, nah, we don't need that. Please just let that be a freaking joke, just because it's like, oh, YouTube is going to be hosting, There
are other YouTubers who would be more qualified.
Exactly. Hello, I'm here. No, but for real, okay, but I will say though, like, yeah, as much criticism as I do deliver, there are some good things, of course, and there have been some good hosts that do stand out. Like someone even brought up Jimmy Kimmel, which I thought that like he actually did quite well as a presenter. I wasn't that much of a fan of him as a host. I just thought like he was just meh, but his presentation this year was honestly very solid. I actually did like that. But also, I gotta say, if there is one part that I gotta say is my favorite, as lackluster as I feel like the ceremony was, this was honestly the best in memoriam segment that they have done in years. I think like they really nailed that so beautifully. What did you think of that?
Yeah, at first I thought it was just going to be a tribute to Rob Reiner, but then to have Billy Crystal introduce all the people who were in Rob Reiner's films and then transition into the montage for the In Memoriam, that really was a gut punch, and it didn't even stop there. We also had highlights from Rachel McAdams highlighting Diane Keaton. We had Barbara Streisand paying tribute to Robert Redford, and in a year like this past year, where we just had so much loss of such great talent, it was a really beautifully put together montage and tribute. And it was also great to see the Lion King co-director Roger Allers featured in there as well.
Yeah, I think actually at the same time with Roger Allers, I think they also did. I might mess up his name, Randy Cartwright, who worked he worked at Pixar. He recently passed away due to cancer, I believe. You Chatwell, you can feel free to go and correct me on that, but he was also mentioned alongside Roger Allers in that tribute. But but to go into that in memoriam, of course, it is a major standout because there were some really big celebrities that did pass away, like Rob Reiner, Robert Redford, and Diane Keaton. So, of course, you need to have some moments for them to really to stand out and have some things to go and say. But honestly, with how they have presented anything, Randy Cartwright. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did a highlight for him as well, and also Catherine O'Hara too. There was that. So there were definitely some big highlights to talk about and to pay respect and to pay tribute to. But I think this year, even though it might have been a standout one because they have to talk about those, what they did, for me, I think that's the true highlight of this year's Oscars. They did a phenomenal in memoriam section that really was very touching.
And unlike some past years, they didn't have it just in the background where we have a singer on stage singing and the camera's focused on them with all the names in the background that we can't even see. They finally got it right how to present all of these people. And in terms of people who weren't in the montage, where was Hulk Hogan? No love for Suburban Commando?
I think Hulk Hogan, well, that's a whole other topic altogether.
Yeah, exactly. Not surprised to see him left out.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, it's fair enough. But no. Yeah, no. Well, I don't know if it's Randy Cartwright specifically, but Nick, you know who I'm talking about though, about the Pixar animator who passed away recently, because he was also mentioned in the tribute with Roger Allers.
I'm pretty sure that I saw his name in there. I could be mistaken.
Is it Lauren Carpenter? Is it Lauren Carpenter? Have I been getting that name wrong? It might. I think it, or maybe it might be Lauren Carpenter. I might be mistaking Randy Cartwright with Lauren Carpenter. just wanna make sure. Randy Cartwright is still alive. Okay, so maybe it is Lauren Carpenter that I've been thinking about.
Yeah, that must be the case because, I'm looking it up and Randy Cartwright alive and well, thankfully.
Oh no! Ralph Eggston. That's who it was.
Didn't Ralph Eggston die multiple years ago? Maybe,
or I don't know, probably, or maybe it is Lauren. Okay, so it is Lauren Carpenter. Okay. So, the chat wall is confirming to me that it is Lauren Carpenter. Ralph Eggston passed away in 2020. Okay. My God, I don't know why that confused me so much. I just remember it was Roger Allers and there was another, there was a prominent Pixar figure that was also mentioned. So that's why it was I got so confused for a moment there.
I think I saw Bruce Struzan also featured in there.
Yes, he was.
Yeah. It's great to see him in there because a lot of his work has gone, I wouldn't say completely unnoticed. There are definitely film fans who know his work, but he's not necessarily a household name among people who don't follow film like we do.
Yeah, still, considering his contribution to cinema, especially with his movie posters that he did with George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, he deserves at least a mention. But also, on that note, sure, a lot of maybe it is the show itself in which like it just felt a bit like, or for me, that it felt lackluster or that it didn't care all that much. But then there's also the factor that maybe it is just me, because I don't know about you, but for me, I think it is at least worth mentioning that just the enthusiasm, not just at the Oscars itself, but just in general, it's starting to fade away. It's like less, I'm starting to see like less and less people being excited for the Oscars, or let alone want to watch the Oscars. Like even when I would talk to my friends and family who are like very avid movie fans, the interest to go and check out the Oscars, like they just don't really care. And there was a time where like we would get together and we would like print out our ballots and we would make all our predictions and compare to each other who got it right and like who got the most correct and stuff like that. But this year, however, it really feels like, that enthusiasm, just that motivation to get in, to get into the Oscars and like treat it as an event, it's just not there anymore. I don't know, like it could be just me, but what about you? Like, I know we've talked about it, like, in between the breaks, but I'd like to know your thoughts, like, on this matter. Have you been experiencing that as well?
I don't just experience it with the Oscars, I just find it with a lot of major events that would have been treated as big events in general. Like with the Super Bowl this past year, it was still a big event, but my family wasn't, we didn't even remember that it was happening until a week before, and we were like, oh, I guess we should do something. So I just don't know why exactly that is, but it could just be the way we absorb media is changing. In the past, we would all get together for events like these and make it a big event, but in an age where we can pretty much pick up anything on social media and follow things there, maybe we have just lost some of the pageantry, and that's just the way that we're changing as a society, not just with the Oscars, but with how we absorb content in general, I feel. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it could be that. It's just, I kind of find like it's so shocking. And even with me, like, I mean, of course, like I have, like I would go and watch it and like prepare to like discuss about it here in the podcast. But I kind of even feel like even with me that my enthusiasm has kind of dwindled down with the Oscars and stuff like that. And this has nothing to do with like what we have talked about, like with the winners or K-pop Demon Hunters or anything like that. It's just like, it's something I've been slowly but surely been noticing more and more, that like my cares for the Oscars or award shows in general, that no offense, because I know like that's kind of like the big thing that you do, is just like, it's kind of like fading away. It's like at the most, if I see like, oh, you know what? I was like, oh, look, that person won. All right, that's nice. That's great. I'm happy to see that. All right. Anyways, and just move on from there. It's like what it's like what those trophies mean don't really have as much weight as they used to, at least for me.
Yeah, I still feel that the Oscars still matter because film matters. And I think when I interviewed Don Bluth, he said that an award is kind of like a hug, and I still think that applies. And I also think that one of the reasons that more people are feeling deflated is because they're having the Oscars way too late in the year. March is far too late to have the ceremony. They should really move it back to February when a lot of these movies still have buzz. By the time we're getting to March, we're feeling deflated and moving on to the next thing.
Yeah, that is true. Although, like, It does feel common that they would, it's almost like tradition where they would regularly do it during March, or like this is a little bit late because it was like literally mid-March. But some people did point out that this year was kind of like an exception, mainly because of the fact that they didn't want the Oscars to intrude with the Winter Olympics. So I get how that could cause some complications there. But I do get what you mean with the fact that, yeah, because of that, because of like the timing also, it's just like the intrigue to talk about the Oscars and stuff. It's just like kind of passed on. Like you want to move on to like what's going to be happening this year. I mean, like already people are like, how is it that like you go and watch Hoppers and then people are suddenly excited? It's like, oh, next year is going to be a great contender at the Oscars. And then suddenly it was like, oh, yeah, we still haven't had this Oscars yet,
Yeah, Yeah, and we also had like GOAT already this year, so we already have multiple potential Oscar contenders in that category that we're talking about for next year when we hadn't even gone through this cycle yet.
So, yeah, okay, well, I will say I am glad that it's not just me then, because I kind of feel the vibe altogether, like, especially, like, with social media, it's just, like, and the spirit of it is gone, and I feel like with going back to the ceremony, with what they have presented, I don't feel like with how they handled it, like, even if the presenters did try, and some of them did well, I don't think that's going to be enough to like win back audiences or to really make it feel like the Oscars matter, you know?
I don't think they really need to bring in the mass audience like they did for the year that Titanic won. I think they really just need to target a loyal fan base that has followed the Oscars in film and appeal to them, I feel, as opposed to trying to appeal to a broader demographic. Although, now that they're changing to YouTube in a few years, maybe they will try to shake it up. But I do think they do take the opportunity to... They're going to have it on YouTube. They can allow all the speeches to be given as long as they want. And also, they don't bleep anyone out if it's on YouTube.
Yeah, that is true. Although YouTube does have a bit of a history of censorship. I can imagine the bleeping is going to stay. But
that is true.
But with that said, I think now's the time we could go and pass this onto the chat wall. And I'd like to know from you all if you have any opinions. I know we don't have a whole lot of time left, but I'd like to know if you have seen the ceremony. I'd like to know what you think, or how do you feel about the mood of the Oscars, and if the enthusiasm and what it means is like, do you feel like it's still strong, or do you think it's just gone? I'd like to know what you think now. Let's see. So yeah, the ceremony. I honestly thought the show was okay, with a few memorable moments and a few good laughs with Conan O'Brien, and that intro of him being chased by kids from weapons, and also Conan now exists in the K-pop Demon Hunters universe. But it was such a dick move that ABC cut EJ and other speeches. Also, I noticed some errors in the technical side of the show, so yeah, I hate the speech cuts like this. All right, fair enough. Let's see. Hulu didn't end the stream early this time, so that's a 10 out of 10 in my books. But in all seriousness, it was a decent show this year. My only big criticism is that they need to fire the producer who's in charge of getting them to cue the orchestra, because wow, that was terrible. And most of the nominees were predictable, sure, but the presenters were fun. In Memoriam was amazing. Conan was also amazing. The speeches were great too, and I love the Grogu bit with Pedro, Sigourney Weaver, and Conan. Yeah, that was definitely fun.
Better than the callback to Aliens that they had in Alien Romulus.
Yeah, that is true. Let's see. As soon as the show opened with a K-pop Demon Hunter segment with Sony animating Gladys Conan into the movie, I knew I was in for a good time. Some jokes went on for a little too long, and I wish they gave the winners more time to speak, but Conan was still hilarious, especially the bit about the UK. I burst into tears when the Princess Bride score played over the In Memoriam, and I know Javier Bardem should be praised for what he said. But Will Arnett, I was not familiar with your game. Oh yeah, we haven't even gotten into like the Javier Bardem just barging in and just say free Palestine. Like, that is a bold move of him. Like, good on him.
Yeah, someone had to say it. I thought maybe Sean Penn would say it, but he didn't even show up.
Yeah, he wasn't even there. Let's see. We still got time for a few more. Let's see. I watched the ceremony last night in a Discord server, and I will be honest, it's kind of all right. There were a few highlights here and there, but for the most part, it's kind of mid. One moment that shocked me is that Subway Surfers appeared at the ceremony saying stuff like 6'7" and Skibbity. I never thought the Academy pulled a fellow kid card just to appeal to the younger crowd. Oh yeah, there was that. I think I'll read one or two more comments, and then we're going to go on to our next break. Yeah, I'm on the same page here, except the thing is, halfway through the show, I just quit. Maybe there were a few fun bits like the opening, Grogu, Will Arnett, the Memoriam, and more, but everything else was so boring. There was barely any enjoyment, some jokes, and more cringe than funny, and I can't help but some of the crew were just being rude. All of us just lost interest. I only saw them again through YouTube by scenes. All to say, in general, I didn't like it. What else is there to say? All right. Let's see. I'll be honest, I thought this Oscars ceremony was just fine, but it was a step down compared to last year. Conan O'Brien as the host was definitely the highlight like last year. Some of the presenters were fun, like Jimmy Kimmel, Robert Downey Jr., and Chris Evans. The performance of Golden was solid, and the Grogu moment was cute. However, some moments felt off, like the speeches felt rushed, and even that weird moment with Subway Surfers and referencing the 6'7" meme. And by the way, people, don't be surprised if you hear any extra sounds going on. There is some work that's happening in this room, so just thought I'd let you know for context. All right, so with that said, we're going to go on to our next break, and even though we are done with our Oscars talk, we still have some more things to go and talk about, so stay tuned, and we got a special trailer to go and check out. And we're back. And even though we're finished with the Oscars, we're not done with the episode because we still got a few more things to discuss. In fact, why don't we go and have a little bit of a possible preview of what could be in the next Oscars. So I think we've already discussed a little bit of that. We've already seen how we've mentioned how Hoppers and maybe even Goat might actually be contenders for the best animated feature category. And also, there was Project Hail Mary, in which, based on the reviews that's been going out, like the early reactions to it, there might be a likelihood that maybe we'll see that become a prominent contender, getting several nominations and maybe be there for Best Picture. I know you haven't seen it as of yet, but what do you think?
I think that Disclosure Day is one to definitely look out for, seeing how it is Steven Spielberg, and most refreshing of all, it is an original concept. It's not even based on a pre-existing book or play or anything like that, so I am excited to see it in that respect. And Steven Spielberg's name is always going to ignite fanfare. You have to be excited for anything he comes out with. The one thing that does have me kind of on the fence is that the screenwriter is David Cope, who does have a solid track record. He was a co-writer on the original Jurassic Park, and also wrote the first Spider-Man, but on the other hand, he also came back for Jurassic World Rebirth, which, yeah, wasn't, his best work, but he also wrote Black Bag that same year, which was really good. So it could really go either way with him as the screenwriter, but I am excited for it overall, and it should be one of my most anticipated films of the summer.
All right, so in that case, let's go further to see if that actually is true, if it really is worth the hype. So with that said, let's go ahead and check out the trailer for the upcoming Steven Spielberg movie, Disclosure Day.
What did you steal?
Secrets.
And that is Disclosure Day, to which the movie is going to be coming out in theaters on June 12th. So, Nick, what did you think of the trailer that we just saw here?
Thing I do appreciate is that it's still not sharing too much about what the actual movie is about. They are building up what is, being disclosed, and what I assume are aliens. We haven't seen what they're going to look like, and hopefully they can deliver on both those respects. With the way that the trailer is being presented, though, I do have a very idea about what it's going to be commentating on. It's going to be commentating on how our own government is keeping information from us, and also about the importance of communication at a time where a lot of people are reluctant to speak to each other if they don't have the same ideals or don't even speak the same language. So I do think it's going to be a very timely film in that respect. Will the commentary be obvious? That remains to be seen, but I do think it does have the potential to be a movie of the moment if it can deliver on those fronts.
Yeah, honestly, when looking at it, it feels like Steven Spielberg is kind of going back a little bit to his roots, where now he's getting back into that whole sci-fi theme. And there's a very strong vibe that I find that it's relatable to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where it's technically an alien movie, but it's not about the aliens themselves. It's about the possible encounter of meeting aliens. So it's almost like a spiritual successor in a way, but as you mentioned, now there's going to be a stronger social commentary that's going to be involved with this, especially with how the government may be hiding hiding secrets from us, and especially like presenting it in an action-packed way. So at the very least, I will say from this trailer, I do see like all the materials that it will build up, where if done well, like if it manages to hit all the right notes, then this could be something very special here. This could be like the kind of thing that maybe we will be hearing its name quite a bit in next year's award season, quite possibly.
Yeah, it could definitely be in the conversation, especially since Spielberg is attached. The question is, will it be more like his film AI from 2021, which a lot of people thought was going to be a masterpiece when it came out, and when it did, the reception was very mixed, with some people loving it, some people hating it, and a lot of people just walking away not really knowing what to feel. But I could also see it being like Minority Report, which didn't get as much attention from the Oscars as it should have, but a lot of people did call it a modern masterpiece, and it's still a very timely film, actually one that aged a lot better than I think anyone could have anticipated. So if it's anywhere near as good as that, then I think we'll be satisfied.
Yeah, although I will say, like, looking back at AI, as you mentioned, I think with that movie, like, there was a lot of buildup, not just because, like, it's from Steven Spielberg, but I think, like, if I remember correctly, it was Steven Spielberg who mentioned that it was his tribute to,
Kubrick.
To Kubrick. Yeah, that he wanted to do something that would pay homage to him. And, well, it just came out like, yeah, I guess. Ironically enough, it kind of came out like how most Stanley Kubrick's would initially be released. Like, it would come out and they would be like, yeah, it's all right, I guess. Shining, and yeah, okay, you know, like, I know, like, with a lot of Stanley Kubrick stuff that, you know, nowadays they're often regarded as like complete masterpieces, but I feel like with Kubrick's filmography, like, there are so many of them that are prominent examples of how when they're initially released, they didn't get a good reception, rather critically or financially, but then they would go on to find a new audience over time.
That was generally the case of Kubrick, and like, probably his most commercial film he ever made was Spartacus. That was also probably one of the more successful, and yet it's the one he probably had the least creative freedom on overall.
Yeah, oddly enough. I honestly completely forgot about Spartacus. But yeah, I will say though, and funny enough, I do see many people like mentioning like a lot of the other sci-fi works that Steven Spielberg has done that he's kind of coming back to, like with E.T. or his adaptation of War of the Worlds. And yeah, I guess you could say that with going back to Disclosure Day, there's something about it that does feel like it's a little bit of a mix between Close Encounters and his adaptation of War of the Worlds. Like, you kind of have that combination where, like, yeah, the tone of it is extremely serious, you know, like you do get a little bit of that Spielberg style whimsy, especially with the scenes with the little girl and like her fantasy visions of like all these animals entering upon this enchanted house in a way. Like, there are those times, like, you got that Spielbergisms of whimsy, but a lot of it is very, like, grounded. A lot of it is very serious. And, like, you could tell it's a movie where Steven Spielberg really has a lot, you know, he has something to say.
Yeah, it also kind of reminded me a bit of Arrival, which wasn't a Spielberg film, but it does feel like it could be in the same vein of that film.
Yeah, they could. It definitely could. So I would say overall, with what we have seen, like, honestly, it has me curious, but I don't know if I'm ready to go and say that I'm like really anticipated for it. You know, it's not like with Christopher Nolan's Odyssey, where, like, especially with the Christopher Nolan name alone and the fact that he's doing a major period piece like that, I feel like it's absolutely going to be a must watch. But in the case of Disclosure Day, for me, like, I'm not ruling it out just yet, but it's the kind where, like, it has my curiosity, but not entirely my full attention just yet. And I mean, like, with the trailer, like, it did well to like maintain a lot of the surprises. As you mentioned, we didn't really see much of the aliens, and like at best we see like maybe the spaceship coming out of the clouds. But like there's a part of me that like maybe I'll wait a little bit until like we hear what the reception could be, because I feel like with Disclosure Day, it's either going to be coming out as one of the best movies of the year, or as you mentioned, it's going to be like AI, and it's just going to come out like, it's okay. You know, it's fine. You know, you won't miss much if you didn't miss it, but I mean, it's not bad.
Yeah, hopefully it does well too, because Steven Spielberg's last two movies were Fabelmans and West Side Story, which were actually really good. I really liked West Side Story, but no one showed up to see them. You could chalk that up to the fact that they came out not long after the pandemic hit, but the guy could use a hit.
Yeah, it's true. Although I will say, like, with West Side Story and the Fabelmans, like, I feel like there was a part of it where they're not major blockbuster hits, mainly because it's not just of the factor that they came out very close to the pandemic, but there was also the factor that, you know, they're Oscar movies. They're obvious, like, it's very clear that they're meant to be like Oscar bait features. Not to say that they're bad, but you could tell that their purpose is more to be appealing to award season more so than to be features themselves. So I think in that regards, because of like their clear intentions to be appealing to award season, it's like that's why it didn't really grab as much attention. At least that's what I find.
I also think that West Side Story skewed a little older, because not as many younger generations know that musical as some of the older ones, and the older generation have the original film that they can watch.
Yeah, there is that, but again, it's like it's West Side Story. It's it's another one of those features where like you're adapting a major like well-known Broadway musical, and I mean I think in that regards, like a lot of people kind of felt a little bit burned out afterwards. It's like, you know, after they got their taste of Cats, I don't know if they're in the mood for another one, even if it would come out as great as West Side Story.
Yeah, that might have killed the movie musical for a little bit. I guess Wicked brought it back, but
yeah.
For a while, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why it's just like, no, we're gonna need a break. Like, leave the stage, you know, leave those things on the stage. At least like now, like it did get a second chance thanks to Wicked, but oh boy, Cats did not do it any favors.
Yes, although animated musicals still doing pretty well, because we had Encanto not too long after, and of course K-pop Demon Hunters.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, animated musicals are kind of like their own thing, but it is true, like they're still doing quite strong. But to go back into Disclosure, if you guys are interested, or Disclosure Day, I mean, if you are interested in checking out what Steven Spielberg's next movie that he will direct is going to be, then keep in mind that the film will be coming out in theaters on June 12th. And with that said, now I would like to pass this on to the chat wall, and I want to ask you all, what do you all think about the Disclosure Day trailer? Are you guys interested in checking it out? Are you guys really that excited to see what the trailer did? Let me know your opinions on this. All right, so let's see. This is one of my most anticipated projects of the year. Props for Steven Spielberg for not repeating himself when it comes to his sci-fi movies, and this is looking amazing so far. He basically reinvented his craft in the best way possible. Speaking of sci-fi films, when I reunited with Domi Shi last week about Elio, I mentioned her about the time I met Spielberg and showed her my photo with him, and she was impressed by it. So yeah, Domi Shi is also a sci-fi nerd as well. You know, it kind of makes sense how she got on board to Elio in that case. This trailer definitely impressed me, and honestly, this definitely looks like Steven Spielberg is going back to his roots. Visually, it's really impressive, and the story itself definitely looks interesting. So overall, this feels like it could have a lot of potential. All right, let's see. Well, was a story very popular with the Latinos and the Broadway community, but now not much else. As for Fabelmans, I remember seeing that movie in a fully packed theater. It had already been out for 4 weeks at the time when I saw it, and I don't know anybody who hasn't seen that one. Oh, interesting. So at least like in that circle, like the Fabelmans got very popular.
Yeah, he definitely had a better theater than I did because I don't think it was as popular at my theater, but yeah, I'm glad a lot of people did see it at his.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, definitely fair. Let's see. Would you look at that? Steven Spielberg is back with a new movie since 2022, I guess. My family being a big fan of him, I am curious to see how it turns out. The trailer looks ominous and epic. It'll open a week before Toy Story 5, a sequel of a Pixar film. And I guess there's not that many comments from here. So, once again, there might be some enthusiasm for Disclosure Day. And again, if you are interested in checking the movie out, then keep in mind that the film will be released on June 12th. And with that said, we're going to go on to one more break. And when we do come back, we're going to take an entire break from movies, and we will be discussing about a new spin-off series that's going to be coming out next year. So stay tuned for that. And now, everybody, it is time that we are going to go and conclude this episode off with the grand finale. And what a coincidence of a grand finale we have here, because believe it or not, Nick is back with us to talk about a Family Guy related story. You remember last time we talked about Family Guy, right?
It was all about the lost pilot that surfaced, and now, in some bizarre coincidence, we're back both talking about the Oscars and also talking about Family Guy almost a year later.
Yeah, you turned out to me you're honestly my go-to awards guy and my go-to Family Guy. How the fridge did that happen?
One of those things.
Exactly. But this is not about a piece of lost media that has been discovered, however. What we are going to be discussing about is actually its future, where after all these years, finally, a fan favorite character is having his own show. Yes, Fox and Hulu have teamed up to announce that they are going to be ordering 2 seasons worth of a new series that's going to be starring Stewie from Family Guy. Now, we still have to wait a little bit, considering that they did order it for the 2027 and 2028 season, but still, this is a confirmation that not only are they going to have that Stewie spin-off series, but at the same time, they've also brought on board Seth MacFarlane to be a part of the show. Now, for those of you curious about what this Stewie series will have, my source here on Deadline actually does have a bit of a description of what the show is going to be about. So, just reading from my source here on Deadline, it states here, in the offshoot, after getting the boot from his old preschool, Stewie is forced to enroll in a new one that's not exactly top of the line. It's attended by a handful of kids he doesn't know and a 75-year-old class turtle with a half-cocked theory on just about every subject. Stewie's miserable, the other kids are miserable, and even the turtle is miserable, until Stewie begins rolling out his trusty array of devices to take them anywhere in space and time, turning every boring day at school into an insane and surreal adventure. Basically, Stewie is now going to be moving on to have his own Magic School Bus style series, with maybe a little bit of a hint of Rick and Morty, knowing how Stewie can be with his own experiments and his own adventures as well. And it's not just Seth MacFarlane who is also attached to this project, where of course he is going to be the voice of Stewie, but on top of that, we also got longtime Family Guy writer and producer Kirker Butler, who is also attached to the project. Now, it is also very important to note that when it comes to the Stewie series, it's not going to be like the Cleveland show where the character is going to be leaving the main series in order to go and just be a part of that spinoff. So it's not going to be like how Cleveland left Quahog for the Cleveland show, and then once that was canceled, he came back. In this case here, however, Stewie will still be a part of Family Guy while that show is going to be on, but simultaneously, he's also going to be appearing in his own spin-off series alongside his teddy bear Rupert. Now, with that, and also there is another thing that's worth mentioning. Don't be surprised if in the spin-off series, you're also going to see more Family Guy characters making an appearance, considering that my source here also states that we could even see Brian making some appearances here and there. So don't be surprised if you'll suddenly find some of those familiar cameos in the show. Hold on a sec. Just need to let that out. We also got a couple of comments coming from Seth MacFarlane, first off, in which he states right over here, "I'd like to thank Fox for this incredible opportunity, and I'm excited to start pretending that I'm collaborating closely with them on the show." We also got Butler, who made a comment in which he says here, "I am honored and humbled that Seth, 20th Television Animation, and Fox have trusted me with one of the most iconic animated characters in the history of television. I have known Seth for more than 2 decades, worked with him on half a dozen projects, and I am hopeful this is the one where he finally learns my name." So yeah, apparently now we're getting a Stewie spinoff. So, Nick, how do you feel about the idea of this? How do you feel that we're going to be getting a Stewie spinoff?
Well, you mentioned that it's not going to be like the Cleveland show where Stewie leaves the main show that he's from. He'll still be part of both, but that does make it odd to give him the spinoff, especially since he's already kind of the scene stealer on Family Guy. From the very beginning, he was pretty much everyone's favorite character. He was already dominating a lot of storylines, so to give him his own show feels like an odd choice. It almost sounds a bit like the Patrick Star show, although I assume however this show turns out, it's going to be better than the Patrick Star show. But you see what I'm getting at here, where you're basically taking a character who was already pretty integral and was well represented, and just giving us more of him. So I'm curious if this is just going to be a case of Hulu just trying to create more content, or if there could actually be a different direction for the character that's worth exploring, because as much as we have seen with Stewie, what we don't really see a lot of is him interacting with kids his own age. We see it from time to time, but it's usually not really the focus of the story. He's usually with the family or working off brand, so maybe if they can establish some interesting side characters for him to work off of, then that could be an interesting premise. And shows with Seth MacFarlane have surprised me in the past few years. When it was announced that Ted was getting a Peacock series, I kind of shrugged, saying, really, aren't we kind of past that? But the past 2 seasons have actually been probably even better than the movies that they did. And I really hope that they do Ted Season 3, even though they probably aren't because of budgetary reasons. They're doing a movie, apparently, like another Ted movie instead. But, you know, I guess I'm cautiously optimistic, although I don't know how necessary it's really going to be to have a Stewie show.
Is it going to be a Ted movie? I heard it's actually like, I don't know if they're going to, maybe they'll continue the Ted series, but from what I've heard, they're going to be doing, they're also doing an animated series of Ted, and it's going to be set more in the present, where they're also bringing back Mark Wahlberg's character, and I think even bringing back Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, I've heard rumors that they're doing an animated series. I also heard the report that they were considering doing Ted 3, but they also said it would be like a multiverse movie, so I don't entirely know what that means, but they're definitely going to try to do more with the Ted franchise in any case.
Yeah, all right. I understand. But to go back into the Stewie spinoff, like, I will say now, I do get why they want to do that show. I feel like it definitely does make sense that if you want to go and give like another spinoff to a Family Guy character, you might as well go with Stewie, considering he is not just possibly the most popular character in Family Guy, but like one of the most popular animated characters on television. So in that regards, it does, you know, it does make sense to go and like give him like the big spotlight, even though like it is true, like you said, like throughout Family Guy's history, whether it be in the earlier episodes or even nowadays, Stewie like he does get to be the main character in several episodes. So like it honestly feels a little bit redundant, or maybe like they have an idea of like trying to separate that, where Stewie will still be there in Family Guy, but he won't be as much of a main character as he used to be. So that could be the case. Like I do get it, but then again, I can't help but feel like when it comes to this idea, it's kind of like 2 decades too late in a way. Like, it's safe to say that nowadays, yeah, like Family Guy is still on TV. It's still going strong after all these years, but its prime has definitely passed. I can't help but feel like if this were like 2 decades ago, like if this were announced in 2006, people would go crazy for it. Like people would like be ecstatic. They would be like, it would be one of the most anticipated shows of that era, especially with how big Family Guy was, and like Stewie was still like highly popular, especially being known as like the what the deuce evil baby and stuff like that. But nowadays, considering that they, now that they're announcing it for 2027 and 2028, I like it kind of feels a little too late. Honestly, like for me, when I heard that, it makes me question is there still an audience out there that would want a Stewie spinoff? Like, even though they're already having like 2 seasons, they ordered 2 seasons, like, is it really going to be enough for people who would want to have more Stewie? Like, would they want more of that Family Guy style content where now they want a Stewie spinoff feature? Like that honestly, I really do question. But then again, I'll just go and say now, I remember talking to a friend of mine about this, and funny enough, apparently he told me that this is the exact same comment that I said about the Patrick Star Show. And yeah, as you mentioned, the Patrick Star Show doesn't necessarily have that good of a reputation, but then again, it's still going on today. It's still, it's still releasing more episodes, and apparently it still has an audience. So in terms of like that kind of viewership, like I was proven wrong with the Patrick Star Show. So maybe there is the same thing with the Stewie spinoff. Maybe there is an audience out there, like they're still very loyal to Family Guy, and that they're willing to go and like add Stewie into the mix, and they want to watch some new episodes just with him. So I guess that's going to be a factor where we will wait and see. But in terms of the series itself, is it going to be worthwhile? Is it going to be something that, that could add in something that we've never seen from the original Family Guy? I don't know. And I think, honestly, the more I think about it, the more that you mentioned how Family Guy already puts a significant spotlight on Stewie. It's just like, okay, we're just going to have, it's just going to be an extra Family Guy, but, now it's just with Stewie, and they're going to add a few kids and a cynical turtle. Like, honestly, like hearing that description kind of makes me think like, okay, so are they bringing in that same turtle in that Leo movie? Like the one that is voiced by Bill Burr. But
I was thinking about the turtle that Stewie thought in one episode, the one that he said looked like a nude Larry David.
Yeah, it could be that. I don't know, but honestly, it's just like there could be some ways that maybe they'll find an idea that could really bring it into a completely different direction than what they would do with Family Guy. And I mean, as I said, like just from the concept, it does sound like they want to make like an adult animated series version of the Magic School Bus that might have a little hint of Rick and Morty. But maybe they'll have an interesting idea in there. Maybe it could work. But for now, I just feel like this is an idea that is going to take a lot of convincing for me to know if this could work. Because again, like Family Guy already highlights Stewie quite a lot, even to this day. And just the idea of it, I feel like it's just something that would have worked 2 decades ago when Family Guy was like at its prime in terms of popularity. Like maybe people would have wanted that then, but now it's just, I don't know, like that's just a matter of like, I'm not like, it's hard to really think if people would, but then again, there probably is a group of people that I have no idea about that would not only go and watch the Stewie spinoff, but at the same time, they would make it popular enough where it could go on to have like a 3rd and 4th season and stuff like that. Who knows?
I think it's also to draw more people back into Family Guy, because even though that show still has a following, there are definitely people who have tuned out and aren't tuning in like they would have 20 years ago. But if they see that there's a new Stewie show on there, they're like, oh, I remember Family Guy. I haven't watched that in a long time. You know, maybe I'll jump in here, because people are more inclined to jump into a new series rather than to jump into one that they haven't watched in several years. So it could be part of that, just keeping the Family Guy brand going. And, and Family Guy remains very popular. In YouTube compilation videos, those still get a lot of views. Family Guy is still one of the most memed shows, so it still definitely has an audience, even if they're not necessarily watching every new episode every week.
But do you think it would work though? Do you think like if the Stewie spinoff series would work, do you think that would also reattract people to go and watch Family Guy again?
I don't know if it would have people going back and watching older seasons that they haven't, but I think the success of the Stewie show is going to largely depend on if they can give him compelling supporting characters to work off of, and not just have him, just carry the entire show on its own. And also just to not just feel like an extension of Family Guy. I feel one of the reasons that the Cleveland show wasn't as successful was because a lot of the humor just felt like retreads of what you would see on Family Guy, as opposed to something like American Dad, where that was still cut from the same cloth of Seth MacFarlane's humor, but it did distinguish itself tonally, the kind of stories that they told. And while there were parallels between American Dad and Family Guy, both had very distinct tones, and certain jokes that you'd see on American Dad you wouldn't necessarily see on Family Guy, which is more cutaway joke heavy, whereas American Dad, it's more of a farce show. So I think if the Stewie show could distinguish itself, it could be a success.
Yeah. That does make sense. I get what you mean. Like, it's all like a major determining factor, but like, I will say at least with Stewie, it does sound like the plot of it is a lot more different than the typical Family Guy formula. Oh, it looks like, sorry, I just got a bit of an announcement. Apparently I got a little extra raid. Ooh, that's good. That's pretty exciting. Thank you very much, Mars Girl, for the raid. Although I will say we are close to the end of the podcast, unfortunately. But hey, it'll go and end off the stream on a high note. And still, again, thank you so much, Caitlin, for the for the raid there. But anyways, back to what I was talking about. Yes. I will say, at least with the plot itself, it definitely does sound a lot more different than what they would go and do with that typical formula that Seth MacFarlane would go and put out. But I will say, though, that still, I think it'll all depend on the comedy. I think it depends, like, if the humor can differentiate itself, then that's going to be the big determining factor. Because, like, if you're going to be watching these shows, you want to go and watch it because of the comedy. You want to go and have a laugh. And if it's just about the same as what you would go and get in Family Guy or something like that, then I don't really see it having a bit of a leg up at that point.
Yeah. Also, I'm curious, you say it's getting a 2-season order, but are they going to be 26 episodes per season, or is it more like 10 episodes per season? Because in that sense, it's really more like 1 season when you really think about it, even though they call it 2.
That is, honestly, that's a very good question, because even my source here Even they're not sure. It states right over here, the episode count for Stewie has not been revealed. I heard it's slightly less than the 15 episode per season the Legacy 20th Animation series are producing under the current Fox deal. So it could be just like what you said. You could actually be right on that, where like it feels like they ask for 2 seasons, but it feels more like just 1. But in that case, I don't know, maybe they'll just do like 12, or maybe they'll just do 10, but I think it remains to be seen.
We'll see.
Yeah, ultimately, I think we will see. And hopefully things are fixed right now in the chat wall, because I did see that apparently there was a bit of a technical difficulty that was going on right after the raid occurred. But now I would like to go and ask you all in the chat wall, what do you all think about a Stewie spin-off series? Are you guys on board with it? Are you guys a little hesitant on the idea? Let me know what you all think. All right, let's see now. I'm honestly not a big Family Guy fan, so I honestly don't know how to feel about this. I honestly have to agree, it feels like it's 2 decades too late. If it premiered in the 2000s during the height of Family Guy's popularity, people would be on board with it. But nowadays, it feels like Family Guy has really passed its prime and not what it once was overall, so I do think we'll have to wait and see. All right, fair enough. Did we ask for a spin-off series of Stewie Griffin? I am not into the Family Guy show, including the memes, but I enjoy the other stuff from the same studio, like King of the Hill. Why not do something original? Why not make an adult animated series project like Nim, The Hobblepots, and How to Be Black that are still in development from Fox? I guess we'll have to wait and see on those. Let's see now. So there's going to be a Stewie spin-off series. Okay, I guess, but it's 2 decades late. I mean, Stewie already has episodes where he goes to adventures in his Road 2 series with Brian, as well as his time travel episodes, not to mention his own episode where he kills Lois and becomes president, and even his own song. But then again, so does the Cleveland show, and that got canceled. All right, honestly, I don't care. The only 2027 animated series I'm anticipating for is Cars Lightning Racers, and probably the ones from the Helliverse seasons. Maybe also whatever Glitch show comes out. I'm not really interested in Family Guy. Lightning is being reprised by Owen Wilson, and I'm happy to see these characters again. All right, let's see. Stewie Griffin is one of my favorite Family Guy characters of all time, and having one of the most memorable moments in Family Guy's history. But that's a big but. I think it could potentially be fun if it's done right. I think it's one thing that the Stewie show needs to do is cut down the cutaway gags. Let the show do its own thing. Overall, what's your guys' favorite Family Guy joke? Do you have a favorite Family Guy joke?
Well, if I'm going to say one just off the wind, probably, I'm taking it. I'm taking this couch. All right, we're going to take it apart and take it out. We're making it harder than it sounds. That's probably the one I reference the most.
Yeah. Honestly, I think, trying to think back, I think a lot that I enjoy is, like, the ones with Cleveland. Like, especially the one, like, where, like, his house gets blown up and suddenly, like, he's in the tub and then is about to fall down. He's like, no. Like those were definitely fun.
I gotta stop taking baths during Peter shenanigans.
Yeah, that or like I do enjoy also the meme where like everybody has their hands together and then Seamus includes his. It's like no, not you, Seamus. Poo. That's also fun. I think I'll go with those for now. Let's see. But I will say, though, like going back into that comment, I will say I do agree with him that there is that likelihood that if done right, this could actually work. It could actually be a lot of fun. But we will have to wait and see, and hopefully they're not going to retread the same kind of jokes like making like all those those Family Guy cutaways. All right, I think I'll read one more, and that should be good for today's episode. Anyways, Honestly, for me, it's a pass. I mean, it's Family Guy. Didn't like them then, didn't like them now. However, I won't stomp on the parade and say cater to the fans. They'll have something to be hopeful. I know how some spin-offs can be for people, especially now that the series that's almost 30 years old. But I could see this going on, as well as something like The Fairly Odd Parents when they made their second reboot with A New Wish. I mean, hey, I certainly won't like it. I know some people might find something to be intrigued of. All right, that's definitely fair. And with that said, that should do it for this Oscar spectacular of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. Nick, thank you so much for joining me on this. This has definitely been a blast of an episode.
It's been a blast again. Thank you so much for having me on.
And if there are any other places that people would like to go and follow you, where can they find you online?
I'm on all social platforms either as Nick Spake or Cartoon Contender, and I'll be covering awards and animation year-round at my site, cartooncontender.com, and you can also visit there if you want to learn more about my trilogy of books, Bright and Shiny, A History of Animation at Award Shows, which are all available now on Amazon in both physical form and in Kindle.
All right, awesome. By the way, I've always wanted to ask, have you ever thought in the future to have an audiobook version of it?
That's definitely a work in progress, but yeah, it's just something that we definitely want to get off the ground, too.
Ah, nice. All right, glad to know that it might be happening. But with that said, hopefully this episode didn't come off as too spicy for you. But hey, if you enjoyed your time here on AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast, don't forget to go and subscribe to the AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast YouTube channel and the AniMat Live Twitch channel. At the same time, if you are listening to this in any other podcast service, which includes Spotify, Apple, Google, and many others, then don't forget to go and follow me there too. And with that said, I'd like to say thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. And until next time, see you later, dudes.